Now, back to your turn on 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's talk radio. The phone lines are open, so call in and join the conversation at 623-1330.
All right, well, welcome back. WBY 1330, Carl Gallups, your host of Your Turn. Well, we left off understanding how Palestine got its name. It got its name from the Roman emperor who designated it with that Latin name of Palestine, which literally means in Latin, the land of the Philistines, around 70 A.D., when the Roman Empire decided that it was going to once and for all drive the Jews out of the area of Israel. And so they named it Palestine in order to enrage and to infuriate the Jews and try to ensure that the Jews would not return back to that area. So that's where the name Palestine comes from. And so this understanding of, or the misuse of the term Palestine and Palestinians is an understanding that most of the world doesn't have today. Most people think that the word Palestine refers to an area that belongs to a particular group of people called Palestinians, who most people think are Arabs, who most people think are Muslims. Therefore, it belongs to the Muslim Arabs. But absolutely nothing could be further from the truth. So let's get back to 70 A.D. So the Romans drove out the Jews and destroyed the temple and destroyed the Temple Mount and destroyed again a lot of the walls of the city of Jerusalem, and many of the Jews were dispersed. So now, since the Assyrians invaded and conquered the northern kingdom and the Babylonians invaded and conquered the southern kingdom, for hundreds and hundreds of years, right up to 70 A.D. now, there is no real nation of Israel, and Jews have been dispersed throughout the Roman Empire and throughout the world. Of course, a large population still living in Jerusalem and in and around what would be called the nation of Israel, but now they are dispersed under the Roman Empire. But now, of course, a lot of Jews still lived in the area, and from 70 A.D. right on up through about World War I, Jews were living in and around that area. There were Arabian people, Arab people, cousins to the Israelites, really, through Ishmael. They were living in and about the land. These people today, a lot of them are called Palestinians, but they're not descendants of the Philistines. The Philistines are a whole separate race and ethnicity of people. They're Arabs. The people who are generally called Palestinians today, they're Arabs. And they illegitimately lay claim to this land of Israel today. And the news media fosters it. And I don't know if it's on purpose, probably so, or just by pure ignorance. Probably both of them go hand in hand. But anyway, this area then of Israel was continually inhabited, really from that time on, by a remnant of Jews still in the land, and Arabs in the land, and various conquering nations and ethnic groups living in and around that land, including the Ottoman Turks and who conquered the land, and the Muslim invaders who would conquer the land. By the way, Islam was not even born until around 600 A.D. That's the time of Muhammad, when he supposedly had his visions and wrote the Quran and established the religion of Islam. So the Muslim religion of Islam has only been around 600 A.D. And then it was around 700 A.D., or the late 600s, when the Muslim Dome of the Rock was built on top of the Temple Mount as a sign of Muslim dominance in the area. So it was around World War I, around 1918, World War I, when the British took control of this area as a part of the spoils of war from World War I. The British took control of this area and then renamed it or redesignated it Palestine after the ancient Roman designation. And that's how that word Palestine came to be used more in the modern vernacular. Now, in 1923, the British divided that area of what they were calling Palestine. They divided it into two districts. one district west of the Jordan River. They called it Palestine. We would call it now modern-day Israel. And then east of the Jordan River, they called the Transjordan. That was in 1923. Now, the Jews were permitted, under Great Britain and their rule of that area, they were permitted to live only west of the Jordan River. And then in 1946, Transjordan was renamed Jordan. And of course, you're familiar with the nation of Jordan. And so that all of that area was determined and settled by the British Empire as the spoils of war of World War I. So by 1946, you now had what Britain was calling Palestine and Jordan. And all of the area west of the Jordan, or Palestine, was to be called the Jewish homeland, or the Jewish Palestine homeland, or the Jewish Palestinian homeland. But the Arabs didn't see it that way. They wanted it all. And they wanted the Jews expelled. And then, of course, the next step in history is when Hitler begins his persecution and destruction of the Jews who lived in the various European countries. Now World War II is upon us. And at the conclusion of World War II, 1945, the survivors of the death camps, the Hebrew survivors, the Jewish survivors, they had no nation to go to. They had no homeland to go to. Of course, many of them came to the United States of America, and until just recently, the vast majority of the Jewish population of the world lived in the United States of America. And I say until just recently because some of the demographic reports coming out of Israel now has the Israeli population of Jews or Hebrews now exceeding or getting ready to exceed the Jewish population of the United States. But when they came out of these death camps at the end of World War II, they didn't have anywhere to go. They didn't have any homeland to return to. So a lot of them who were not killed then fled, of course, to the United States, but a lot of them fled back to the ancient area of Israel, or what the world was calling Palestine. These people would be the ones to help create the new Jewish state of Israel in 1948. But before we get there, we'll go to 1947, a couple of years after World War II had ended. The British in 1947 finally had enough of trying to rule and occupy this area with all of its cultural and ethnic problems, and so they turned the control of this area over to none other than the wonderful, illustrious organization that has so blessed the world and has so enriched the lives of the Israeli people. The British turned it over to the United Nations. And the United Nations immediately went about setting out to divide the land between the Jews and the Arabs living in the same land. And so the United Nations delineated certain areas of land for the Jews and certain areas of land for the Arabs. When we get back on the other side of the break, we'll continue with the truth about Israel.